Hi, Bev. Hi, Daljeet.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Sandy.
Cold enough for you?
That's pretty chilly. At least the sun's out, though.
Yes, actually, it's quite nice out. I was just outside and I was surprised. I didn't even have a hat on and I wasn't that cold. So, hello, Chief.
Afternoon, folks.
Hi, Chief.
Wilson.
Hello, everybody.
Deputy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sandy, were you saying the weather's nice out? I might disagree with you on that.
Well, I was just outside and I didn't have a hat on. And I thought, it's not that usual burning cold. When it gets this cold, it's like burning, it hurts and it didn't hurt. So I thought, hey, that's not that bad. I'm not going to say it's like go out in your shorts weather, but it's hey, it's Ottawa, it's January. Come on.
Going out without a hat isn't a luxury that I have ever if it's winter.
I think at some time one day, like a temperature like this, I took a pot of boiling water outside and threw it up in the air to see if it's true that it explodes and nothing hits the ground. This is something Blair could try someday.
I'd like to see Steve in one of those mink issued hats tied under his chin.
I think he would too.
Just to be clear, though, these are not mink hats. We couldn't afford that with our budget, and that would be cruel to animals. So they're artificially fur lined, but they are probably the warmest piece of kit we give our people.
Okay. I have one from my sister from the military, but it's probably 30 years old. So it is mink. It's the real deal.
Actually, I have one of those too, but my head is way too big for it. And I probably shouldn't have said that.
Okay, I think we're all here now. Is John Steinbach's on? I'm just trying to spot.
I don't see the chair. Oh, there's the chair.
Okay. So I think for us, we can go whenever the chair is ready. John's the only one that's not on. Okay, Chair, just so you know, we're all here now.
You're muted, Chair.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Sorry, just a little disorganized at the moment. Just give me one moment, please. Okay, I would like to call the special meeting of the Ottawa Police Services Board to order for January 26, 2022. I'd like to start by recognizing that Ottawa is located on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Host Nation. The peoples of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The Ottawa Police Services Board honors the people and the land of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. Today, Ottawa is home to approximately 40,000 First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Ottawa's Indigenous community is diverse, representing many nations, languages, and customs. The Ottawa Police Services Board honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. We are currently broadcasting on Zoom and live streaming on YouTube. Given this meeting is being held electronically, I want to caution that there is a possibility of technical difficulties. Should we receive any disruptions, I would ask that everyone remain patient as we work to fix the issue and resume the meeting just as soon as possible. I'll now proceed with the confirmation of the agenda that the Ottawa Police Services Board confirmed the agenda of January 26, 2022. Is the agenda confirmed?
Confirmed.
Confirmed.
Are there any declarations of interest?
No.
Seeing none, we only have one item of business for our special meeting today. Over the past several days, we have been seeing coverage of a convoy of vehicles and people that are making their way to Ottawa. I would like to take this opportunity to emphasize that we live in a democracy and all people have the right to peaceful protest. We need to create space for those protesting to have their voices heard, and we need to make sure that the environment is safe for everyone, including those protesting and members of the public. It's important for public figures to lead by example. Regardless of our own political beliefs, we need to protect the safety of everyone involved. While everyone has the right to protest, this protest cannot infringe on other people's right to safety. This includes the police and other essential workers who continue to work tirelessly to keep our communities safe. This weekend could be a busy one on our streets in Ottawa, and I would encourage all of those who don't have business downtown to try and avoid the downtown area. There are lots of places to visit. There's Manotick and VARs and lots of smaller communities that would be good for day trips and lots of winter activities without visiting the downtown core. So our goal here is to be safe. I know our police service and their partners have been working very hard in preparation, a very fluid situation that is occurring. And I thought it would be prudent, even though things may change dramatically between now and when protesters arrive in the Capitol on Saturday. But I thought it was important that the board hear a briefing and the preparation for protests this weekend. So Chief, with that, over to you.
Sure, thank you very much. And through you to the board, to recognize the full board has turned out on a special meeting. Despite your busy agendas, I appreciate that level of support and dedication to governance and oversight. I've got here with me today Deputy Chief Steve Bell. Steve's responsibilities is in charge of intelligence operations. He and his team have been coordinating from a national, provincial, and local perspective all the information and intelligence that we can gather in regards to all the different elements of the demonstrations that we are understanding will or could take place in the nation's capital over the weekend. And by the weekend, I will be clear that that zone could be from as early as Thursday through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I have Acting Deputy Chief Trish Ferguson. She has operational lead. The operational plans are informed by the threat and risk assessments coming through Deputy Chief Bell. Using that information, she then identifies the potential risks or the known risks, attempts to create a plan that will anticipate, if not fully negate, all of those potential risks, and does that through a coordinated way, not just with other police services and national security agencies, but with city agencies, along with other partners in the community. Supporting all of that are communications efforts led by Executive Director John Steinbachs. John has established through Trish coordination with the other agencies, including the City of Ottawa, communications with the board, and that will continue today and throughout the entire event until the event is concluded. CAO Blair Dunker will be working on tracking any associated costs, which includes full cost recovery efforts to the extent that we're able to. But just understand, an event of this duration and nature will have significant operational demands on the organization and will incur costs associated to it, but that will be tracked, and we'll do our best to secure cost recovery wherever possible. This is an unfolding event, Chair, as you alluded to. What started out as a single expression of demonstration through what was called a freedom convoy involving vehicles from across Canada, over the last several days, and particularly in the last 24 hours, has changed substantially. There are an increasing amount of other interested parties who are considering, if not actually articulating, coming to the nation capital and participating in a range of related demonstrations and in some cases counter demonstrations. It is still very early in the stage for us to understand the new dynamics involved. And again, that's why Steve and his team are literally in real time connecting across the country, in order to understand the evolving state of affairs. And Trish, in real time, is adjusting the plans around the risks that are associated to this. So we'll give you the best briefing we possibly can right now and answer the questions that you give to us in the best possible way right now. But please consider that literally an hour from now, the nature of the event may have changed, the risks associated to it changed, therefore the plans associated may have changed. Our commitment is to keep the board updated through communications like this and to keep our partners, including the City of Ottawa, updated with the best information we can going forward. With that said, I'd like to turn things over now to Acting Deputy Chief Ferguson for the core briefing for the board. And we'll take any questions or engage in any discussion that you facilitate after that, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. So good afternoon. I would like also to thank the members of the board, the media, and city councilors for being here today for this briefing. We know there's a lot of interest in the community about these upcoming demonstrations, and we plan on keeping everyone updated and informed throughout the weekend. The Ottawa Police Service has already invested a lot of time and resources in preparing for this event, and I would like to take this opportunity publicly to thank our planning team, which is made up of veteran officers with decades of experience managing demonstrations. We have built a comprehensive joint strategy that is designed to manage the demonstrations and respond to events as they occur. Our police liaison team members are embedded with the Ontario Provincial Police Team, and this collaborative approach has been very effective in helping to inform our response to this. When these demonstrations arrive in Ottawa, the Ottawa Police Service is the lead agency for this event with overall incident command. In conjunction with the RCMP, we will be standing up the National Capital Region Command Center in order for all agencies to be in direct and real-time communication. Our priority is to maintain the safety of members of our community and participants in these demonstrations. Our mission statement is that the Ottawa Police Service, in a collaborative approach with other police agencies, federal, provincial, and city partners, community organizations, and event organizers, will provide a safe and secure environment in the City of Ottawa during the Freedom Convoy 2022 event. We will be placing an emphasis on proactive engagements through police liaison teams to facilitate communication, de-escalations, and peaceful resolutions to rising incidents. The current information that we have at this time is that there is one main demonstration called the Freedom Rally, which involves a number of trucks and private vehicles arriving in Ottawa from across Canada. The exact number of participants in the main demonstration is not currently known. However, all open source information and our interactions with Freedom Rally organizers indicate that this will be a significant and extremely fluid event that could go on for a prolonged period. Our planning team has been in contact with the organizers of the Freedom Rally demonstration, and communication with the organizers has been productive and cooperative. Efforts are being made to establish communications with all other actors that may also engage in related demonstrations and/or counter demonstrations. Our operational planning reflects this assessment and is being designed to adapt to multiple scenarios. As with any large demonstration, there will be unique and asymmetric elements that are impossible to predict and challenging to manage. That said, we are planning for a range of potential risks, including, but not limited to, counter demonstrations, blocking of intersections, interfering with critical infrastructures, and unlawful and violent activity. We've developed a joint communication strategy with our policing partners and the City of Ottawa, and we will be keeping the public, the Ottawa Police Services Board, and City Council updated throughout this event. A staffing plan has been developed to minimize the impact on police calls for service across Ottawa unrelated to these demonstrations. We are working with the RCMP and Parliamentary Protective Service, and we will have a joint command structure working in the National Capital Region Command Center. We're also working with our City of Ottawa and policing partners to help manage what we anticipate to be significant traffic disruptions and delays in Ottawa throughout this coming weekend. We have arranged a police liaison officers at the site of the demonstration who will be the participants' first point of contact. Residents and visitors can expect to see a large police and emergency service presence in the downtown core and on major highways and roads throughout this event. The Ottawa Police Service and its partners manage public safety related issues at hundreds of demonstrations every year. and we will do our best with demonstration organizers to preserve the peace and minimize impacts for residents and businesses while protecting the right to demonstrate. As I said, this is likely to be a very significant event in Ottawa's downtown core and on local roads and highways. We encourage visitors and residents to be aware of traffic updates from the City of Ottawa and avoid travel in the city core, if possible, to expect significant delays. I'm happy to answer any questions now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chief Ferguson and Chief Slowly, for the presentation. I'm going to entertain questions from board members first, followed by questions from members of council. So we'll start with Vice Chair Smallwood.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate you may not be able to answer this question because the situation will be fluid and I'm sure you'll be making decisions on the fly. But I just wondered if you mentioned about the potential for transportation interruptions, major highways and roads. Is there some sense of how long, if for instance, it was a blockade was put on the Queensway, how long would the police allow that blockade to continue on for? Is there any sense of that, or is that something that hasn't been determined and will only be, and similarly with intersections and roadways throughout the city, have you sort of have a predetermined amount of time that roads will be allowed to be blocked for, or will this be something that'll be determined as you go? Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Smallwood. There'll be a number of factors that will go into any consideration around any aspect of the demonstrations where they cross into unlawful activity. And that could be from blocking a roadway to breaking a window. It would depend on whether or not the action actually creates a larger public safety risk than can be justified to facilitate the protest to that point. So is the access to a hospital or is the access to a works yard? Obviously, a works yard has a much lower risk factor than the access to a hospital. Is the time of day late in the night when there is almost no traffic on the road? Or is it during high peak traffic and therefore there's more risk to pedestrians and road users? So the short answer is it depends. The longer answer is, to be clear, if there is a significant risk at any point or points in the demonstrations that are taking place where the right to a demonstration now creates an unacceptable safety risk to the residents or to the city, we will make a decision based on that risk assessment. That will be up to the incident commander, informed by the intelligence and the threat risk associated to it, and in coordination with our partners. We will do our best to communicate to those participating in that activity that it's unlawful or it is dangerous and unsafe, and encourage them to discontinue it. But if there is a refusal and that risk remains, we'll take the most measured and appropriate manner to alleviate the risk and move the demonstration back into a more safe mode of operation. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, it does. I appreciate your answer, Chief, because I realize how this is so difficult to determine in advance what might happen some point in the future. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Vice Chair Smallwood. Member Meehan.
Thank you, Chair. Chief, I'm wondering, are we going to be setting up a perimeter? Like, will the trucks be able to go anywhere, or are you going to try to contain them in the downtown core? And I guess secondary to that question is, what kind of resources, how many members will have to be out on this? And I guess you can't actually say how long this is going to continue. So do we have the resources?
Thank you. I'm going to turn a number of those questions over to Deputy Chief Ferguson. We do know that it's a multi-day event. So far, the original core demonstration, the Freedom Convoy, indicated that this will be a multi-day event taking place over the course of the weekend. We have yet to establish the same level of certainty with the other actors that are indicating that they will be engaging in some form of demonstration within the National Capital Region. There is a resource plan, and I'll ask Deputy Chief Ferguson to speak to that. That plan includes a range of options around creating the safest zone possible for all the participants, the residents, the visitors, and options including limiting access and egress to certain sites are being considered. What we've seen so far in other jurisdictions is that The core demonstration involving the vehicles have been peaceful, well coordinated, cooperative in nature in the other jurisdictions. This is different because this is the terminus of all the different demonstrations. And so there are going to be multiple other actors involved. It'll be much harder for us to create the same level of certainty around what's going on. So as we've said, we're planning for a maximum flexibility until we can get to a level of certainty. With that, you've asked some more specific questions around staffing levels, our capacity to manage a multi-day event. So I'll turn those more specific questions over to Deputy Chief Trish Ferguson.
Thank you, Chief. So I think we are building a scalable plan. Again, the information has been coming in, has been pretty fluid from the beginning of the week to now. So what we have asked for our planners to put in is build in some surge capacity if we feel we need it, but to make sure that we are not overtaxing any one group of our members to the point where we're not able to respond should this be a prolonged event, which we are expecting and planning for. In terms of our staffing levels, we are able to draw on some other units that, are not on the front line right now. So we're able to provide some of that for a short period of time over the course of the weekend. So I think we will be well placed in that regard. And in terms of where our folks are going to be deployed, we've been very successful in the past, in past demonstrations at leveraging a few people to have a large effect, if you will. So our police liaison team has been something that we have increased over the last year after some of the demonstrations we've seen, and they have served to be a really great resource in terms of engaging with the leaders of the demonstration in conversation to make sure that things such as egress routes and emergency routes for our emergency vehicles and our city partners are able to carry on. And as the chief mentioned, thus far, the groups have been fairly cooperative in that regard, and they're not interested in creating an unsafe situation for the communities that they're in. So we're taking some positive from that, but ensuring that our plan will provide us the opportunity to flex should we need to.
Maybe just one pop up on that, and thank you, Trish. As was referenced earlier on in the deputy's briefing, there's a lot of coordination with other local agencies, Parliamentary Protection Services, the Ontario Provincial Police, RCMP, National Security Agencies. Ottawa Police has the overall incident command. Trish and her incident command team will be able to draw on additional resources beyond the Ottawa Police Service. So we have layers of scalable effort within our own resources, and we have partnerships that are coordinated around that plan across the city. It is a reminder, it doesn't need to be explicitly said, but I will remind weekends are our busiest time in the city. We still have 1 million people that call this their home, and it's the largest municipality in Canada. And we are a 24/7 business. So in addition to this series of demonstrations in the downtown core, we still have policing for the rest of the city, and we'll have to manage that as part of the overall plan that Trish is putting together. Hopefully that answers your questions, Member Meehan.
Thank you, Chief. It does. I'm just concerned, I guess my concern, and I don't even know if you can address it, is like a multi-day event. These are truckers coming, they're going to require, I don't know, accommodation, washroom facilities, food. I don't know if there's somebody going to be coordinating that. I mean, I think things can change over a course of a few days, depending on what kind of amenities that they're avail themselves of. If there's a lot of people that can't get out and can't get food and I'm worried about how volatile it could get. Do we know anything about if anyone's going to be assisting in that regard to keep everybody, fed and watered and happy? Thank you,
Member Meehan. To be clear, the logistics needs of any demonstrations that come into the city are the responsibility of the demonstrators themselves. We will not be assisting them in any other way other than we would normally do in terms of providing direction, guidance, support for the demonstration to be peaceful and lawful. Their needs for food, shelter, water, or anything else will be entirely up to them. In the past, we have had, particularly with the COVID period, we've had some work with Ottawa Public Health to help to remind people around health protocols, and at different times providing levels of support in terms of masks and that to reduce the impact potentially of COVID. I trust that our COVID demonstration efforts will continue in that regard. But the demonstrations, any demonstration that comes to this, that's entirely up to themselves in terms of how they support themselves. We're here to facilitate lawful protest and to keep unlawful violent activity from happening in this city.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting it's the OPS's role or any police service role to do that. I'm just hopeful that somebody is going to take it upon themselves to keep them as happy as possible. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Mann. Just one point of clarity, we're the largest geographic municipality in Canada. We didn't mean to slight Toronto. Member Norman.
Thank you, Chair. So first of all, Chair, let me thank you for rising to this occasion and calling this special meeting. This was the need of the call, and I thank the Chief and the entire command for coming up and giving this operational important update to us. And this is really, really important because we have been receiving a lot of calls, as you would all have been. So, Chief, I have some of the general questions. Events like this, we all agree, cannot and shall not be ignored and needs priority because these are unforeseen events and community safety of the protesters. Everybody is concerned. What is the general cost impacts on the event like this, hypothetically?
Thank you, Member Norman. I may rely more on Trish and Steve as they've seen different events in the city longer than I have. This as it's the Freedom Convoy's stated length of demonstration is over 2 days. I haven't in my tenure here as Chief of Police seen a multiple day event. We've had all day long events. The simple answer to your question is we're going to be tracking the costs from when we started planning for this last week all the way through full demobilization and any days after where there are still police resources involved in managing the after effect of whatever occurs during the demonstration. Blair Dunker as a CAO has already started to track all associated hard and soft costs to this demonstration. We'll exercise whatever legitimate cost recovery opportunities we have. And so you can be assured that at the end of the year, the board will receive a breakdown of the costs associated to large events like this, the Maryvale explosion, which was a multi-day event just from last week. And we'll make sure that that is tracked over the course of time so the board has a full understanding and as full an accounting as possible. I will ask Steve or Trish if they've seen previous multi-day events and if there's any reference to the total costs associated from those events prior to my arrival as Chief of Police.
So, Chief, I can speak to that first, and then Trish can add in. We have had several multi-day protests of many different varieties. Some occupying parks, some occupying major intersections for multiple days. The history on all of those is every demonstration we have in the city is unique. So the policing expectations and city expectations on them are unique in every circumstance. We don't expect or anticipate this demonstration to be, or series of demonstrations to be any different. And so like the chief said, we will be actively tracking costs all the way through so that we can apply a number to it at the end of the day. I wish I could say a demonstration that lasts this long will cost us this much, but they're also different. It's impossible to apply a number against it other than to say it's something we're actively tracking.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything additional to add. I think it's going to be a unique event, and depending on it will be, you know, the cost of overtime for officers and a few key pieces of equipment that we may be required to have on hand for this. But I think Steve said it all.
So thank you, Chief, and Acting Deputy Trish and DC Bell. So as we all know, this event, irrespective of whether we have a budget or not, we have to prioritize because this is concerning our all safety and well-being. So just a quick comment. Events of this magnitude, once they are done, you track and everything. What is the recovery rate, meaning that if the federal or the provincial or the city is responsible to compensate the OPS for the track these expenses, what is the success rate? Meaning that are the 100% costs are recovered or some percentage, because that will ultimately affect our budget.
Thank you, Member Nerman. And I'll look to the command team as who's best placed. Okay, Blair, thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. So from my understanding, we do have a federal budget line up to $3 million, and that generally offsets costs related to events such as Canada Day, for example. And I'm not sure that we've been drawing on that as much through our COVID times, because there haven't been many planned events. But I would caution that with the Maryville fire explosion, for example, and the planning for this event, these would not have been unnecessarily forecasted type events. So we can exhaust that 3 million, very quickly. And we will be tracking those costs, but there are some, federal offsets for that.
Thank you, Blair. Member Nerman, does that answer your question sufficiently?
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Chair. Those were my questions.
Thank you, Member Nerman. Member King.
Thank you, Chair, for holding this meeting, and I'd like to thank staff for the comprehensive briefing, including Deputy Chief Ferguson. I know that in your operational brief, you had noted that there has been some correspondence, there's been some coordination with event organizers. I'm just wondering, did the event organizer actually file a permit application with the City of Ottawa? And if there are several organized events, have those other event organizers also filed a permit application with the City of Ottawa demonstrating their intent to have demonstrations in the city?
Thank you, Member King. I will look into whether the convoy demonstrators have filed that permit request. And I am not aware of any other protest requests that have been filed as of yet, but I can get back to the board with that information.
No, I thank you for that. Obviously, if there are going to be substantive numbers of demonstrators and there are organizers, we obviously want to ensure that there's communication with those organizers and with those demonstrators to really ensure that they understand the limits to their activity, whether that's around breach of peace or imminent breach or unlawful assembly or causing mischief. So it will be very important to ensure that we're able to communicate strongly with the demonstrators to ensure that they are able to exercise their rights for demonstration, but that there are also limits to what can be done. And obviously, if there are breach of peace, that we have the resources here to really address that and ensure that the city is orderly during the event. So I thank you for that and look forward to that response around the permits and the potential, obviously, for education and information being relayed to demonstrators to ensure that the event is peaceful.
Thank you. I've just been updated that they do, in fact, they have not got a permit. The convoy has not sought one of those. But to your point about communication, you are right. It is crucial. And we have learned that with our police liaison teams. If we don't have the opportunity to commute ahead of time when they request the permit, we will communicate with them on the ground and make sure that they are aware of the limitations and the boundaries around which they can protest. So that's we will have that piece in place.
And obviously, we want to encourage all organizers to actually file a permit so that we would be able to communicate with the demonstrators and ensure that they follow the law and that they don't contravene criminal code sections. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member King. Are there any other board members that wish to ask questions before we go to members of council? Seeing none, we will, our clerk will promote you to a panelist as I call your name. We'll start with Councillor McKenney.
Thank you, Chair. Got in. Now I see what the issues are. So thank you for this. This is helpful. I just haven't heard what advice police are offering to residents who live downtown. It's there are many, as you can imagine, dozens have been in touch. They're nervous. It's, you know, they have to get the groceries. They are out with their children. They can't just barricade in their homes and avoid the streets that they live on. So I just wonder what advice you have for both nearby, like local residents who live in the downtown where the convoy is expected to converge, and also to businesses who, you know, those who can and are opening their doors that want to continue to. What advice are you providing?
Councillor, maybe I'll start, but I'd invite others. Again, as of right now, first of all, thank you for your question. As of right now, the message is avoid the downtown core for travel purposes. And I maybe put a finer point on it, predominantly vehicular travel. We're going to do our very best to keep the roads open for obviously mass transportation, buses, vehicles that do need to access and egress from the downtown core. As of right now, we don't have any information to suggest that the entire core will be untravelable by any means of transportation or by pedestrian modality. We don't have any information, threat or risk information to suggest that people or business owners need to barricade themselves into their homes or their businesses, or that they need to close their businesses if they're operating their businesses. Should that situation change, we'll communicate that as early and as clearly as possible. But as of right now, no, we're just suggesting that if you don't need to travel into the core for business or for the essentials of groceries and doctors and that type of thing, avoid it if you can to relieve pressure on those arteries in and around the downtown core. As of right now, the residents in the core, businesses in the core should consider operating as close to normal, but be aware of information coming out from ourselves and our partners, the city, and stay up to speed on what's happening in and around legitimate sources of information for this series of events that we're planning for in the downtown core. Hopefully that answers your question.
Partially, except that, you know, all indications and what people from that are connected to this convoy is that it, you know, they are expressing quite disruptive and using disruptive and quite extreme, I'll use, rhetoric around their intentions. So again, people not worried about how people might not be able to get with their car down Cartier, but if, you know, potentially thousands of people coming into the city who are expressing those extreme and disruptive and sometimes violent sentiments. I think that it's, you know, if you're in the area, you are worried. You have children, you have to move around, you have to get to wherever you know, your daily lives. So I just, yeah, I wonder that maybe I could ask you this. In your conversations with the Freedom Rally, has there been any discussion about with them about their rhetoric, their violent and extreme rhetoric? Because it's pretty well documented on social media.
So I'm going to turn that very quickly over to Deputy Chief Bell on the intelligence side. But you've heard early on, in every other jurisdiction so far, the core demonstration associated to the Freedom Convoy, Freedom Rally, has been peaceful, lawful, and cooperative with the local police and local city officials. We're not aware of any incident that would rise to the level of violent criminal behavior and would require us to provide public safety warnings on a more general basis, other than to avoid the downtown core. If that information changes, we will make appropriate communication available to the board through our city partners and to the communities and businesses that are affected. I also want to be clear, through mainstream media, social media, there are a range of other actors and entities that are considering and articulating that they will be participating in some form of demonstration in sympathy for or in counter to the core demonstration. And there are a range of people on social media who are producing a range of statements from benign to threatening. And all of that is being monitored through the national, provincial, and local intelligence operations in support of the planning that Trish is leading. That said, I will invite first Steve and then Trish to comment on anything further from a threat risk assessment that we could provide materially at this point to residents and businesses in the downtown core.
Yeah, to build on what you said, Chief, so thank you for the question, Councilor McKinney. We do continue to track various streams of information and intelligence coming into us. It would be erroneous to say that there is a demonstration coming and that all of the information is centered around one group. What we're starting to see is there are many different groups contributing to the dialogue that's occurring around the demonstration that's going to happen over the weekend. We will continue to track that. As the Chief indicated, we will continue to make any sort of public safety alerts that are necessary as we go along. It is an active stream of the planning that we're engaged in, and we will continue to update it and provide information to the planning team and the public as it is necessary. Beyond that, when it comes to businesses, when it comes to people within the area, what I can let you know is Deputy Chief Ferguson talked about our police liaison teams. They are actively involved and engaged with the business communities and with other community stakeholders in the areas to get those lines of communication going as well, to be able to provide the most up-to-date, timely information that we have on a situation that is emerging and changing on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you. I'll just leave it at this. I'm actually on the Facebook of some of the convoys, and it is, they are talking about hold the line until they resign, permanent gridlock zone around Ottawa. Like it's not just your regular protest coming to the city. So people are concerned. I will await as we know more and see more. I understand that in other areas we have not seen violence, but that was not their target. Their target is Ottawa. And I'll just leave you with this. Maybe when you're talking to them, you can let them know that federal politicians actually aren't in Ottawa over the weekend. And it's really cold here and there really are no public washrooms. So I'll just leave that at that. But I will wait for updates from you as you know more. I understand that it's difficult at this time, but I just needed to make it clear that people who live on these streets that are going to be occupied by this convoy are quite nervous, and businesses as well. So thank you, Chair. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor McKinney, for your input. And we're holding this briefing today because we recognize the growing concern of our residents, and we also recognize the importance of safety for all of our citizens. On the one hand, people are entitled to peaceful protests, but we're not entitled to bump into other people's rights to safety. So, the police service is working very hard with the other partners to ensure safety, and we will endeavor best we can to keep people up to date in this very fluid situation. So thank you for being here, and we'll move to Councillor Fleury.
Chair, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Great. Good afternoon, members of the Ottawa Police Services Board, and thank you, Chief, for your briefing and your team's availability. A couple of questions have come, and I did share with you a recent email that I've shared with other chiefs, bylaw and emergency services, relating to concerns from our respective BIAs. So I won't I won't re-raise those points, but following your answers and questions from the members so far, there's a few things that I'd like to understand and clarify. So we do have existing truck routes in Ottawa. As part of the discussions that your team is having with the organizers, are those clarified with them? How does official truck route and the concept of, or the reality of demonstrations apply in this instance, I guess, is more my question.
I'll leave that to Deputy Chief Ferguson to answer, but I think you've probably for the most part answered. The truck routes are to facilitate transit and commerce. Demonstration is a different beast, but Trish, if you can provide any further detail.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Councillor Fleury, for your question. I think the chief has alluded to it. These folks are here to protest and for their voice to be heard and exercise their democratic right to protest and demonstrate. And so I think they will be not necessarily abiding by local truck routes, considering also that there are a number of people who are from out of town. So I think they may not be familiar with what they are. We have seen anecdotally that there may be 4 points of entrance into the city's downtown. And so they will likely be making their way as directly as they can up to Wellington, is our understanding right now. We continue to work with them, and the lines of communication are open with the organizers, and may be able to influence some of that to make sure that we're able to keep lanes open for emergency vehicles and keep them out of really, areas where it's not sustainable. But at this point in time, I suspect their goal is to get to Parliament Hill.
Thank you for that. In areas where we do see public safety risks, thinking of high volume pedestrian areas or radii that don't allow for truck movement, have we thought of additional measure to limit the movement, or on the opposite, clearly define what our truck routes are and what would be kind of a respectful following of local rules? This is not, this is not to state on the demonstration, but perhaps proactively disclosing our truck routes and taking measures to protect areas where there's no truck movement by the dimension of the roads and pedestrian safety. Have you considered that?
Trish, I'll leave that to you to respond. Thank you, Councillor.
Sure. Yeah, I think we can certainly identify that in conjunction with our partners at the City of Ottawa, our traffic partners there, to identify. I don't think, I think we can certainly identify those and keep those areas open. Certainly the major intersections, we want to make sure that we are able to keep those clear and free of traffic. So we will be identifying those. In terms of pedestrian traffic, our safety is, of our citizens is going to be paramount, as it is in any of these demonstrations. So that's the first and foremost what we want to make sure, that nobody's being put at risk by any of this. So if we need to negotiate with them, that's where our police liaison folks will be on the ground to be able to do that. But those intersections and areas will be identified, and we will make sure that at the very least our folks on the ground know that, and will prevent that from happening.
Thank you for that. Just to further clarify for me, so are you saying, would you consider proactively closing some streets prior to their arrival from a pedestrian safety point of view?
I don't know that that's going to be feasible at this point without knowing the volume of traffic that we're going to be dealing with. So I think we want to make sure our first priority is going to be the major intersections and routes that we need to keep clear for fire, ambulance, vehicles to be able to carry on through. But if we get to where pedestrian safety is at issue, we will be sending officers to the areas to make sure that is being monitored and assessed as we go. We'll put resources on the ground.
Okay. On a different thinking, 90% of Ottawa is vaccinated. Business owners have been collaborative in respecting public health measures. As this protest happens, and as the visitors do make commerce in Ottawa, how are we reassuring employees, frontline employees that are going to be at clerks and in stores that will be open? I'm thinking of particularly large assets and smaller ones in my area. I won't name them to trigger points here, but I think you know areas that I'm talking about. How are we supporting those business owners and those employees who have applied and followed vaccination regulations and mask mandates? It's one thing to demonstrate on Parliament Hill. It's another one in terms of coming into contact and not following public health regulations. So the risk of that seems apparent, and our business community is concerned and fears what this looks like. So could you clarify what we're asking of business owners in those instances, and how are we going to communicate to business owners on approaches in relation to demonstrations and visits to those businesses that you could choose to close, but could likely also remain open?
This is Trish, you prepared to answer. Councillor, I again appreciate you recognizing it's a slightly different direction that we're going in. We've had a pandemic plan in place in coordination with the public health folks and Dr. Etches and her team. The issue of supporting health outcomes and limiting exposure to all populations, including business owners and their staff, has been an ongoing concern and an ongoing operation. Trish Ferguson leads our pandemic response for the service, and no doubt she can speak to the ongoing efforts around the pandemic piece, as well as how, if any, correlation there is to this particular series of demonstrations that we're considering over the weekend here. So Trish, back to you.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, we will be flagging this. Obviously, it's an issue that we expect may take place given the nature of this demonstration. And so we'll be working with our city partners in bylaw, who have been taking the lead in a lot of these issues, and make sure that we're first engaging and educating people. And then the enforcement piece is something that we will, entertain if that's where it needs to go to. So business owners, I think, would be encouraged to, not escalate situations, but if they are feeling that they need, presence at their businesses, then obviously a bylaw will be there, and we will as well.
Okay, I'll leave. Oh, sorry, Chief, I saw you on mute. I apologize.
Just one, and it's implicit in what Deputy Chief Ferguson has been speaking about, but for the period where there are active demonstrations that our officers are managing with our partners, including a wide number of city agencies, transportation works, paramedics, fire, we're going to have to triage demands for service across the entire city. And so again, just as long as there's an expectation setting that the incident commander will have to look at all demands for service and triage that. Someone may call in legitimately because there is a concern about something happening in relation to a public health matter, but it may not rise to the level of a resource deployment if there are other more critical risks that are happening. But the risk of COVID, public health outcomes are priorities. They'll be managed within the realm of risks that the incident commander and their team has to assess throughout the entire course of the series of demonstrations that we're now anticipating.
As I've seen your team being very organized with other agencies through events. We've seen it through Canada Day, for example, very different context, but the spirit of collaboration between authorities. Could we request that a wing of the response be dedicated to BIAs and members, so that those calls are recognized, and wondering if could be some proactive presence in the larger commercial property that I'm thinking about, as well as some of our smaller retailers in one of the highest profile area of our city. That I think you can also know what I'm speaking of.
Councillor, thank you. I'll turn things over briefly to Trish. If we haven't already established a line of communication with BIAs and other stakeholders within the anticipated area where the demonstrations are going to take place. I'd be surprised, but we'll ensure that that's the case. And specifically, if you or other councillors have residents group, BIA groups, stakeholder groups that could be affected, that can be plugged into our planning team, we will obviously want to have those lines of communication with affected stakeholders. Trish, over to you for any additional comments.
Thank you. Yes, we have had a team dedicated to the police liaison team. And while a lot of the information they have been gathering up until this point has been with, organizers of the convoy and team leads on the convoy, as well as other police agencies, I believe we have already begun those conversations, both with our neighborhood resource teams, our community police officers in the affected areas. And I appreciate, Councillor Fleury, that yours is one that may be receiving some spillover from Parliament in terms of the areas in your ward. And I believe, we have always shown special attention to that area because we do know that it can be an attractive spot for people. And I anticipate a fairly significant police presence, as we have on days like Canada Day, where we are present in that strip of your ward.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to both for your response. Thank you, Chair, for offering this opportunity. Maybe as a last request, Chief and Deputy Chief, if you could, I've sent you an email with those contacts, and I think maybe a senior team member of yours, if they could liaise with those key business leaders in our area, I'd appreciate it.
Will do, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fleury. Councillor Brockington.
Thanks, Chair. How many people are you estimating will be part of the various protests?
Councillor, I'll turn that over to Deputy Chief Bell. Again, just to restate, we're giving a briefing based on current information. The information literally has significantly changed in the last 24 hours, and it may change again, but we'll provide you with a sense of the scale that we can as of right now. That will change literally within an hour after this. So, Steve, can you give any indication around that?
Yeah, so Chief, as you indicate, thanks for the question, Councillor Brockington. It at this point is a really emerging and changing target on a regular basis. We know that the truck route in itself started on the West Coast, has swelled and shrunk as it's gone across. It currently sits at a number that we know is going to be added to within the next couple hours as it reaches another town. That being said, we're also tracking other parallel groups that are looking to come in to the city to actually conduct a demonstration at the same time. To give you an accurate number of who is going to be on the street on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, or Sunday morning is extremely challenging and difficult right now. We are anticipating planning in the 1,000 to 2,000 range, but that is going to change in an hour and will definitely be firmed up within a day. What I can tell you is we're providing the most up-to-date information. Deputy Chief Ferguson and her team are doing an amazing job in taking all of that information, planning for worst case scenario, managing to create best case scenario. So we will continue to update on the information we have. We just don't have a firm number right now to be able to nail it down and provide you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, an estimate is what I was looking for. And I certainly think you need to plan for not what I would call the worst case scenario, but certainly a larger number. You could get a lot of local people who join in, and local residents who want to, as you say, counter protest that. So what makes this different is it's not just people, it's transport trucks. And I'm really concerned that if they're coming from 4 directions, they're coming from east, west, north, south, the ramifications this has on the mobility of people who are moving for all different reasons, different purposes, to, from work, coming to a hospital, doctors doing their business, could be impacted. I don't think the city is fully aware of what the impacts will be on Friday and the weekend, because we have people, trucks, transport trucks, coming into the city. We don't normally handle any type of significant transport trucks given our geography and lack of industry. So there's got to be a much better communication push through the various channels, the city, the police, MTO, even OPP, to make people aware in real time what's happening. So I stress that. I'm also concerned about people who live in the downtown core. And if roads are basically blocked, the ability for emergency services to respond to emergencies, whether it be health, fire, police. And I would like you to seriously consider dedicating lanes, an east-west lane and a north-south lane in this city where truckers or protesters can't go. So whether it's Albert or Laurier, and it's a through lane that emergency services will know that if they need to get through downtown, they are not going to be blocked. And you have police maybe at Elgin and on the west side, keeping that lane open, kind of like a parade where you reserve it for a parade to go by and no one else can get through. And same with the north-south. We have thousands of people living. We have probably hundreds of people in hotels this weekend. And that's a concern, is how will emergency services be able to get to emergencies if we are completely clogged with transport trucks? And finally, I'll just say to Carol Ann's point about it's, I think, reasonable that a number of protesters will be staying in Ottawa. Where do you park hundreds of 18-wheelers? Is there dedicated parking? Are we making LeBreton Flats open? Like, where are people going to park? Are they just going to abandon 18-wheelers on the street and I'll pick it up on Monday? Like, what is the plan to ensure that our downtown core doesn't become a parking lot for 3 days? Because even if they stay in hotels, you can't accommodate 18-wheeler parking. So that's a concern as well. But it's basically, yes, I want protests to be done lawfully and safely, but also thinking about people who live and work here. In case of emergency, how can we ensure that they can be served quickly by emergency vehicles? So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I can assure you that Trish and her team will have been considering all those issues. And with the additional clarity and emphasis you've provided, they'll make sure that they go through that effort again. But all of those issues are already in consideration within the planning cycle and will continue to be right through to the very end of whatever forms of demonstration we see come into the National Capital Region.
Anything further, Councillor Brockington?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll move to Councillor Dudas.
Thank you very much, Chair. A number of my questions have actually been asked already, so I won't repeat them. I did want to ask, though, in regards to the police officers and their safety. This is a large-scale demonstration we're anticipating. A number of people will, you can almost assume that the majority will not be wearing masks or will be advocating to not do that. We have a pandemic in our midst, which is the whole rationale as to why this is happening. And I am concerned that our members will be going out there and having to deal with that in addition to the regular stress they have from their daily jobs dealing with these demonstrations. So I was curious as to if Ottawa Police are working in lockstep with Ottawa Public Health, or what actions you're taking to address the added burden of protecting, not burden, but the stresses of our officers dealing with this protest with the pandemic.
Thank you, Councillor. I will very quickly turn things over to Trish. As mentioned, Deputy Ferguson leads our pandemic response as well as the operational response to this series of demonstrations. I do appreciate you recognizing the additional stress and burden that this does place on our already stretched workforce, particularly our frontline officers and communications civilians. Many of our officers and civilians have already been working through the last weekend in the intelligence gathering and risk planning that we've been talking about over the last hour. And they will likely work through the following weekend as well, in some cases going 10, 12, 14 days straight without days off in order to manage this to the best way possible. I can also share with you that, and I think there was reference from other speakers earlier on, the wide variety of commentary that is taking place on social media forums in regards to the various aspects of this demonstration. There has definitely been a thread of those conversations that are threatening towards police officers from across this country. There is a thread within these chat forums that are disinformation campaigns suggesting that police officers, police service members from across this country are actively supported and complicit in any of the aspects of the demonstration. And I can tell you that within the last 24 hours, the Ottawa Police Service received a direct threat from a counter-protest source to the safety of our officers and the safety of the facilities in which our civilian members and officers work in that we had to deal with in the last 24 hours. The threat risk assessments that we are assessing are not just to the residents and the businesses of Ottawa, but also to our own members and their families. That is the reality of what we've been dealing with over the course of the last 24 hours, and we'll continue to monitor those threats and address them as best we can. Specifically, your questions around PPE. We have been working with Ottawa Public Health from the very beginning of the pandemic, supporting their lead on this for the city. We're in lockstep with them and have been from the beginning. But I'll turn things over to Deputy Chief Ferguson to speak specifically around how we're going to support our members from a COVID PPE protection as well as mental health and wellness. Trish?
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Councillor Dudas, especially for your concern for our officers. It has been a long pandemic for sure for our frontline folks, and appreciate your thoughts for them. We have done remarkably well comparative to a number of services across the country in terms of keeping our members safe, and I think a large part of that has been our pandemic team who have been in place since the beginning. And have remained in place, and they are on top of all the latest in terms of PPE options and what is being recommended by public health at the time. So our members are well equipped with PPE. We have goggles. We went out and got the ones that would not get knocked off their face, that don't fog up. We've spent great attention to that. And in addition to that, we have a staffing plan right now that is carrying us through this latest Omicron virus. For holding back a reserve number of officers per shift. And so should we have a surge, we are able to respond by bringing those officers in. Some of those officers are actually going to be in and working on the overnight hours this weekend to assist us in our most conservative ability to be able to staff this demonstration. And so they will be in, but we will be doing everything we can to make sure that we protect them from, thankfully, good news, bad news, these demonstrations are outside. And so that assists us in terms of keeping our members safe and distanced. So I think we have done very well. And we are seeing now, just like the climate in Ottawa, that we're starting to see a decline in our numbers of members who are either testing positive or who are in isolation leave. So we're, I touch wood, in a good position there. But thank you for your question.
Well, and thank you for your response. And once again, it's greatly appreciated that our frontline, whether it's police or paramedics or fire department, are out there on responding to incidents like this. My only other comment, and it's really more a comment, it's already been addressed, is the need for strong communications leading up to this. I represent a community in the East End, and once again, I really want to enforce to residents living in this area and all around the city that to avoid the downtown core, really, for so many reasons, not even just traffic, but once again, to avoid spreading the virus within our community. So once again, I cannot emphasize enough the need for strong communications coming out of police and, of course, the city to complement that as we go forward and as we see this come into our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dudas, for your important comments and questions around the safety of our first responders. Councillor Leeper.
Very much. Thank you very much, Chair. I guess I just want to follow up on a couple of questions about communications as well. Have you made any, or do you anticipate any frequency of communications to the press? How often can the press expect to be updated?
Thank you, Councillor. A communications plan has been developed over the last several days. Obviously, the last day, 24 hours, has in all aspects changed that. Executive Director John Steinbachs is lead on communications. He has for several days been in contact with the city as well as all the other agencies that we're partnered with. This is through the board, and again, we're grateful to the board for creating the opportunity. The first chance for us to provide information, but you can rest assured that there will be regular communication through the appropriate channels, whether it's directly from the Ottawa Police Service, directly from the City of Ottawa, or other partners who are appropriately situated to provide whatever that update is. The frequency will increase as we get closer to the actual events and as we get more clarity around the nature of the events. But we understand the need for the best level of communication and coordination possible within the partnerships we have and to the general public.
Okay. I'm looking potentially, at a store on Bank Street might want to make a call as to whether or not they should shut down. To what sources should they turn for information that is up to date and accurate?
Trish, I'm not sure if we have been able to assign a single point of contact in general, whether it's a media inquiry or a private citizen inquiry. But I will say, Councillor, just as Trish prepares to provide that information, the decision for a store owner to close their business is entirely up to that business. Our ability to provide clear and timely information, we will do our very best. But ultimately, that will be the individual decisions of individual business owners, staff, and employees. But Trish, can we provide any information at this time around points of contact or websites that people can turn to?
Thank you, Chief. We are working on this, and we are actually embedding a media person in our planning team. They've already arrived and are working on those things. So we will have somebody. I would assume our ottawapolice.ca will have some information, and we will obviously Twitter and Instagram. Our folks are out there and active on that. If a business owner is not sure, I think they should probably be able to look to that. Intersect is another city partner and an agency that will be providing through to all of our city partners. So there will be some information that they can obtain from, I'm sure, other city services as well, whether it's traffic and road safety. But we will, once we get that, it'll be part of our communication plan as to who businesses could turn to, what sites they can check to make sure if there is something moving towards their business, what will be available to them.
And then more broadly for residents who might be making decisions about whether to come downtown, leave the downtown, go skating, not go skating, what are the best ways for them to stay informed through the course of the weekend?
I suspect it will still be our ottawapolice.ca and our Twitter handle. So at Ottawa Police, and we have a command center and a duty inspector handle as well. So if that's going to be the most up-to-date things, we will make sure that's part of the communication plan that we reveal.
Okay, and if this has the scale that I think some of us are anticipating, it might, hourly communications would be greatly appreciated. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Leeper. Are there any other members of council who wish to ask the police service any questions? Seeing none, this ends our briefing for today. I want to thank the board and members of council for attending on such short notice. And I especially want to thank the police service, Chief Slowly, Deputy Chiefs Bell and Ferguson, and all of the other members of the police service who have been involved in. And I know you're all working very, very hard in anticipation of this protest this weekend. We are concerned for your safety, and we want to make sure that we keep all the men and women of the police service safe as they keep us safe. So please pass along on behalf of the board our appreciation to all members of the police service for the hard work that they are putting into this weekend. I think what we heard on this call today is a growing concern from this community about the potential for this protest this weekend. We live in the nation's capital. People who live here are accustomed to protests. And I have always personally appreciated the front row seat to the, life of the nation that the living in the city of Ottawa provides to us. And we live in a democracy. We support peaceful protests, but what we don't support is hate and violence. And we ask that people that come here come peacefully to make their views known to our elected officials and to the government, but that they do so in a peaceful manner and that they respect that Ottawa is our home. And we take pride in our home, and we don't want to see violence or destruction of property or harm to any member of our community. So we ask you to come in peace and make your views known in a peaceful manner. I know that there was a lot of concern expressed on the call today about communications. We will continue to provide as up-to-date information as is possible as we move forward. We heard very clearly from the police service today that this is an evolving situation. It's a fluid situation. And so we will do our best to communicate. But thank you again to the police service and to all first responders and to the city of Ottawa at large, everyone who's going to be working hard this weekend to keep us all safe. And thank you again to everyone who joined the call today. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Chair, for calling the meeting too. I think it was very informative, and thank you, Chief. Learned a lot.
Good day, folks.
Thank you.